Israeli tanks in the steppes of Ukraine. The news that two unspecified European countries backed by the United States intend to buy more than 200 used Merkava Mk2 and Mk3 tanks from Israel had a bombshell effect. This is unprecedented, as Israel has never sold its tanks to anyone in the 40 years since the tank came into service. And this immediately raised the question of their possible supply to Ukraine. On the one hand, Israel has repeatedly stated publicly that it will not supply its weapons to the conflict zone. But on the other hand, the country has special relations with the United States, which it will not lose under any circumstances. Therefore, it's very likely that Israeli chariots, Merkava from Hebrew translates as chariots, will eventually end up in the steppes of Ukraine. In this video, we'll talk about Merkava Mk2 and Mk3 and try to predict how they'll affect the course of this Ukrainian-Russian war. The Merkava is, in its way, a unique tank. There's nowhere else like it in the world. First of all, they have a built-in 60mm mortar firing at a range of up to 3,500 meters. Experts say that in a low-intensity conflict, its presence increases the effectiveness of the tank. Secondly, the presence of a swelling of 6 troops. That is, the tank simultaneously acts as an assault self-propelled gun and an armored personnel carrier. Third, the engine of the tank is carried forward, and therefore, it's an additional protection for the crew. Now for more details on the Merkava Mk2 and Mk3 tanks. The Merkava Mk2 was designed based on the experience gained during the 1982 war. The Merkava Mk2 was, so to speak, a direct result of the Lebanon battles. It turned out that the armor protection on the Merkava Mk1 could not withstand the 125mm smoothbore cannon fire of the T-72 tanks used in Syria. So the main purpose of the upgrade was to further increase the armor protection. The turret armor is reinforced by installing overhead shields. The steel armor of the shields has increased resistance to shells as compared with that of the Merkava Mk1 tank. The side shields of the modified shape are also made using a new type of armor, and there's an option of installing dynamic protection units on them. In combat conditions, however, the vehicle proved to be less resistant to handheld anti-tank grenade launchers, not to mention man-portable anti-tank systems. The fire control system was upgraded by installing a more advanced ballistic computer and a new laser rangefinder. However, the Mk2 still used the same 900 horsepower engines of the American company General Dynamics Land Systems. As a result, weighing 61 tons, the Israeli tank has a towing capacity of only 14.75 horsepower per ton, a very low figure. In the Russian T-72, this figure is equal to 19. The main armament is the same as the Merkava Mk1. The M68 105mm rifled gun, which is a licensed version of the British L7. The tank's ammunition is 62 rounds, but can be increased to 86 rounds if necessary, overloading. The ammunition consists of 5 types of rounds: armor-piercing subcaliber, shaped charge, armor-piercing high explosive, smoke, and shells with ready assembled ammunition. The Merkava Mk2 tanks entered service with the Israel Defense Forces in 1983. The Merkava Mk3 tank started entering the Israeli army in 1989. Compared to the Merkava Mk2, the changes were significant. Most attention was paid to increasing the tank's firepower and survivability. The Merkava Mk3 increased its firepower by equipping it with the MG250 120mm smoothbore gun, which is similar to the German RHEINMETALL RH120 from the Leopard 2 tank and the American M256 from the Abrams. Thanks to the upgraded small-capacity anti-rollback device, the gun has about the same dimensions as the 105mm M68 tank, which allowed the Merkava Mk3 to not increase the internal volume of the turret compared to the Mk2. The accuracy of fire is also improved compared to the Leopard 2. The ammunition used is specially designed Israel-made M711 armor-piercing subcaliber rounds and the multi-purpose M325 shape charge and high explosive rounds. The 120mm NATO rounds could also be used. The tank's armed with 48 rounds of ammunition stowed in containers of 2 or 4. The tank's survivability was increased in 2 ways. Firstly, its strengthened armor, and secondly, the electronic systems that help the crew to survive on the battlefield are installed or upgraded. As for the armor, the designers used on the new vehicle upgraded modular armor, steel packages, boxes with several layers of special armor inside. They're bolted to the surface of the vehicle, forming an additional built-in dynamic protection of the so-called passive type. Such armor was installed on the hull and turret, on the roof and sides, thereby reinforcing the upper surface of the tank in case of a projectile hit. The turret length was increased by 230 millimeters. The side shields for protecting the running gear were supplemented with 25 millimeter steel plates on the inside. Special safety measures were taken to protect the bottom from mines, improvised landmines, and explosive devices. The bottom of the previous Merkavas were made of 2 steel plates, upper and lower, with fuel poured in between. It was thought that this peculiar tank could further increase the protection of the crew against explosions. The Merkava Mk3 did not fill it with fuel, thinking that air conducts the shock impulse weaker than any liquid. The combat operations in Lebanon also demonstrated weak protection of the tank's stern, as grenades from the hand grenade launchers caused the detonation of the ammunition located there. The solution was quite simple. Additional armored fuel tanks were installed behind the hull. The filtering and ventilating unit was installed in the rear compartment of the turret, and the batteries were installed in the battery compartment above the track. In addition, baskets with outer aluminum plates were hinged at the stern. Spare parts and personal belongings of the crew were stored in these baskets. All this provides additional protection from cumulative ammunition. As a result, the length of the tank increased by almost 500 millimeters. On electronic systems, the LWS-3 electromagnetic radiation detection warning system was used on this tank. 3 wide-angle optical laser sensors mounted on the sides of the turret aft and the cannon mask provide an all-around view, alerting the crew when the laser beam hits the vehicle of anti-tank systems, forward air gunners, and enemy radar. The azimuth of the radiation source is displayed on the commander's display, who must immediately take any effective measures to protect the tank, turn on a smokescreen, or destroy the source of danger with his fire. The Merkava Mk3 also began to be fitted with a new fire control system in 1996, the Knight Mk3. Among other things, it's capable of following a selected moving target automatically, which greatly increases the probability of engaging the target and allows the tank to fight fairly effectively, even against low-flying helicopters using conventional projectiles. Another notable innovation, instead of the frankly weak for such a tank 900 horsepower engine, was replaced by the 1200 horsepower engine designed by the same American company, General Dynamics Land Systems. Therefore, despite the increased weight of the tank up to 65 tons, its power-to-weight ratio increased to 18.5 horsepower per ton of weight. Still, this figure's lower than that of any Russian tank. The T-72 has 19 horsepower, the T-80 has 23.5 to 27.1 depending on its modification, and the T-90 has 21.5 to 24 horsepower per ton of weight, depending on its modification. At the same time, all Russian tanks are lighter. The heaviest of them, T-90, weighs 46.6 tons, i.e. almost 20 tons lighter. The German Leopard 2 has 24.2 horsepower and weighs from 55 to 66 tons, depending on the modification. And now, knowing the main characteristics of the Merkava Mk2 and Mk3, let's try and forecast the influence of 200 such tanks on the Ukrainian-Russian war. Let's say right away that they will not bring any breakthrough. Firstly, there are not many of them. What's 200 plus Ukraine's current 500 to 600 tanks compared to the 2,500 Russian tanks fighting in Ukraine? And according to calculations from the American portal globalfirepower.com, Russia can put up to 12,000 more tanks from its vast arsenal. Secondly, even the Merkava Mk3 is not especially superior to the Russian T-72s, but it is inferior to the T-90s, of which there are already more than 100 and growing. Israeli tanks are very heavy for Ukrainian fields. There are already videos on YouTube of Leopard 2s stuck in the mud during the Ukrainian counterattack, and they weigh roughly the same as the Merkava, with considerably more pulling power. Plus, even the Merkava Mk3 doesn't have good dynamic protection. It's written about some kind of passive dynamic protection. What this is to the end is unclear. It turned out that the Leopards also did not have normal dynamic protection, so the Ukrainians hastily installed kits Contact 1 dynamic protection of the first generation, which protects against conventional shaped charge ammunition, not tandem. The Russians had Contact 5 dynamic protection of the second generation or RELIKT protection of the third generation, which protects against not only the shaped charge rounds of the tandem scheme, but also against armor-piercing finned subcaliber rounds. Is it that bad? No. In war, every weapon fights in combination: tanks, artillery, aviation, and reconnaissance assets, and every new weapon that comes into the Ukrainian army adds its part to its total power. And we're sure that one day quantity will turn into quality. Add to this the much higher motivation of Ukrainian soldiers fighting for their land, so we're sure that Ukraine will win. Do you agree with our opinion? Write your comments below. If you liked the video, please like it and appreciate our work. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There will be many more interesting videos about modern weapons.